Hey, everybody, welcome to NTWC Plus. Good to have you along today for another exciting program. I think this is going to be really interesting. We're going to talk about generators and how important they are and how they can keep the lights on for you, but there's a lot more to it than just that. Kyle Raabe is going to join. Robbie's going to join us in just a couple minutes to talk about that. But let's thank our sponsors, first of all, who make these programs a reality week in and week out. We go all the way back to USAA, and I say all the way back because they've been a part of what we've been doing for a very long time, and we sincerely appreciate the support of USAA. Without them, the National Tropical Weather Conference may not even exist. They're the ones who have made it a possibility for us to do this, and we appreciate that. The South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, our host for the National Tropical Weather Conference. We'll be there in April. We hope we'll see you there as well. Go to the website, sign up, and come join us on South Padre Island in the month of April. The Weather Company, Weather Boy, and Live View, all folks who make these programs possible week in and week out. Joining us today, former director of the National Hurricane Center, Bill Reed. Good morning, Bill.
Hey, Tim, how are you doing?
Terrific. Looks like you're in Texas today.
Yep. Yeah, yesterday we set a new record high for Houston of 95. It got down to a bone-chilling 73 last night. It's going to be up in the mid-90s again today, so we might tease the record one more day. And we're going to get a not-so-hot front. It'll cool it down to near 90.
Towards the end. Autumn in Texas is here.
Yep. Summer light is what we're now calling it.
So we had in McAllen, which is, for those of you watching, is a very southern tip of Texas. We had 100 degrees on Monday. That was a record. But it's October. It's not supposed to be 100. Come on, 98, okay, but not 100. Jeez. Hurricane Hal's here. Dr. Hal Needham. Good morning, Hal. Where are you this morning? That's not your usual backdrop.
Looks like that's right. Good morning, Tim. Good morning. Yeah, I'm here on the island this morning. It's still summer here as well. Water temp still holding around 84 degrees, and it's feeling, except for the early sunsets, you wouldn't know it's not summer.
Wow. That's not your usual backdrop. Hope everything is okay. It really looks like you're sitting in the exam room of a hospital. There's the curtain outside. So we trust that's not where you are. We're good.
If you hear some machines beeping, don't pay attention to it.
Do not peek behind the curtain. Well, good to have you guys along. Let's get to the program. Bill, let's do the introduction and let's get going. Welcome, everybody.
All right. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Joining us is Kyle Raabe. He is the Executive Vice President of customer services with Generac. And after we had Hurricane Beryl last year, the word Generac was slung around an awful lot. So I look forward to hearing from him that he works with the communities and customers to make sure the power stays on when the storms hit. From backup generators to reliable power solutions, Kyle brings insight on how families and businesses can stay safe and prepared when outages strike. Kyle, welcome to the show first.
Morning, Bill.
Morning. For starters, how about if you give us a kind of a quick overview of Generac Power Systems and how you play into the energy landscape in this country these days?
Sure. Yeah, Bill, and again, welcome and good morning to the whole team here. We do a lot of different things relative to power resiliency, and just power to the grid. If you think about the history of Generac and who we are, we go all the way from a very small portable generator that you're going to see at your local home center, right? That somebody might buy in a pinch or you're going to go, camping, all the way up to the big generators that sit on top of hospitals and data centers and their power, the commercial infrastructure that we all enjoy today. The things we don't think about, you see the red outlet at a hospital, that's backed up by a generator. And those are the types of things that we do on the industrial side of the business. For the sake of this show, if you bring it down a little bit closer to what I do specifically, right? So I run our consumer power group. And our consumer power group is really how we show up from a resiliency and efficiency perspective to a typical homeowner or a small business. And like I said, it starts with that portable generator that you see at the home center, right? You might see it, at any one of your retailers, and you see them very proficient or very obviously online that you can buy and have a portable generator shipped to your house, all the way through, as we were actually talking before the show here a little bit, to those ones that get installed on your house, much like the one you might see behind me in the picture, or even larger ones that go on a small business, right? Like a convenience store, a typical 100 kW generator that just comes on automatically when the power goes out. So that convenience store, lights stay on. You might have the gas pumps, several of the gas pumps still keep running in the face of a storm. But that's really, it just in a nutshell what we do. And we've made an expansion and investment, I would say, in the last 3 years, then to just, start moving into the battery or energy storage. It's a much smaller portion of our business, but we know that that's, important for the future of America's energy landscape and for consumers. But, Bill, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do and how we work to help consumers.
Great. It seems to me, I may be off base on my timing and all, but early on in my career, I just don't remember many people having generators, including many businesses. A hurricane would hit, and you faced almost everything was without power for other than emergency places like hospitals and all. Has there been a real growth in the application, people buying into the application of having backup generators?
Yeah, Bill, you're 100% correct. 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, it wasn't nearly as prevalent. But then again, neither was the trajectory of power outages. Last year, in 2024, we saw about 1.5 billion hours of the grid being out for all different reasons. Now, majority of them, they're weather driven, right? As we're talking about right here, right? Hurricanes, massive impact on, whether your power grid stays up or goes down. But Bill, what has really kind of transpired over the last 5 to 10 years is that as the grid has become a little bit more unstable, whether it's, a homeowner or a business, essentially kind of taking it into their own hands and saying like, hey, look, if that which was once reliable, being the grid, right, has slowly come down, right, and outages have continued to rise just on a general trend, right, over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, homeowners and businesses alike have kind of taken it into their own hands saying, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I stay up. And if it's a small convenience store, Bill, like you were talking about, like, hey, I never saw a Generac sitting on a small convenience store or a gas station or a business. Those business owners have said, well, hey, guess what? When the power goes out, like I'm losing revenue, right? The people of the community that depend on me for, to buy, food for tomorrow or for water to drink, or, hey, I'm from Wisconsin here, right? You go buy a gallon of milk, right? So milk and eggs, but all those things that the local community like depends on and is a revenue driver for you, that goes away when the power goes out. So putting in a standby generator to have my convenience store up and running makes actually fiscal sense for them. And then certainly for a homeowner, like if I bring it home, I got to have the fridge on, right? I've got to have the air conditioning going. I've got to have, my well pump running. So you're right. It has really kind of escalated over the last 10 to 15 years.
That's interesting. So I was on the assumption that it was the perception of increasingly more severe storms that may have been driving demand, but apparently it's the many other things that cascade through the grid that give it problems that is growing the business.
Yeah, well, Bill, you guys probably know storms better than anybody, right? And what we know and we see is that the storms have become, I'll say, the word I use is less predictable, right? Like what was once, something that in the past, even last year when we saw, Hurricane Beryl like come to, South Texas, right? It went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 and then hit as something else faster than we've ever seen before. So just the fact that weather, we call it climate change here, right? Like another great example, I'm sitting here in Wisconsin and we've been in the 80s, right? For the last several weeks, like October, Wisconsin, 80s, like those words don't normally go together. So we're watching that climate change, right, impact weather patterns. And those weather patterns are really, kind of the fundamental driver of why we're seeing the grid get so fragile.
Yeah. This year we've had a total absence of impactful storms on the U.S. coastline. Have you guys noticed any downtick in demand because of no storms current?
Yeah, for sure, right? Especially coming off the year before in 2024, you have 4 hurricanes, land, right? And someone in 2024, you say the word hurricane, right? And everybody's head snaps around. They look like, man, I'm exposed to it because look at them roll off the ocean. The hard part, you're right. This year we've seen, 0 hurricanes land. We've seen them come off the Atlantic, and they generally, the weather patterns have them going back out to sea. But the thing that we do see is there's still a large portion of the population, right, that plans, right? So we're still installing generators almost at record pace for this time of year with no storms. There are, though, Bill, and we'll talk about this as we get going later here, there are the people that don't prepare, right? Or they're procrastinators or what have you. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's generally a large portion of America that says, well, wait till it gets a little bit closer. And in the case of an installed generator, right, if you wait till it gets close, that's where you get in trouble because you can't put one of these things in 24 hours.
No kidding. Yeah. The one of our key preparedness phrases is, unfortunately, the best educator and recruiting tool of being prepared is to have yourself hit by a storm.
Right.
Wish it really wasn't that way, but that tends to be the case on that. So anymore, that's about all I hear is Generac. That was like on the news every night after Barrel last year. What makes you guys different than, say, other companies that make generators for the home consumer?
Sure. Well, one of the things is we've been doing it for a really long time, right? We've been at this, for over 60 years. And, every year we get better at the products that we produce, how we inform consumers about the products. And again, that goes all the way, Bill, from that portable generator that's bought at the home center, that if you build a procrastinator, like, oh my goodness, the storm is coming, what do I do? Well, I run out to my local, home center and I grab one. It could be Home Depot, Ace Hardware, Lowe's, Costco, right? I'm going to go grab that, right? And we get better there, right? So they see our brand and they see our name there. But I think what really makes us special is, one, the products that we engineer and design, right? And we're there to build a high quality machine that runs. And in some cases, as we were just talking before, it might not be asked to run for 4 years or 5 years, in some cases 8 years, right? So it's on the side of the house and you're going to maintain it. What makes us special beyond the products that we have are the number of dealers that work with us and for us in the local market. So whether I'm in the Texas market or Virginia or Michigan, right, it's the thousands of dealers that have partnered with us, that when something does happen, right, hey, they're there to make sure that it goes okay. They're there to make sure that the installation is correct, that it's permitted correct. And that is really, it's part of our secret sauce to the homeowner, that when they're interested in a standby generator, yep, it's a great product, but that we also have a trained technician and a trained dealer that's showing up along with that to get the installation and the maintenance correct.
That's interesting. I'm going to go off the script and go into all kinds of questions. I always do.
No, go for
it. Do you all provide you had trained technicians? And I've heard nothing but good words from folks who have had generators for a long time about how well it's maintained. Do you have a training program that if somebody wants to market your generator, that you put their technicians through?
For sure. Yeah, Bill, what we do, and it's a really good question because I do think it's a big differentiator in the market. What we do is, we've got, over the years, we've developed a really wide array of ways in which we train them. We've got training centers that are located, our largest training center is here at our corporate headquarters, in Southeast Wisconsin, and we always invite, our technicians to come here. We've got factories that are close by, take a tour of the factory and actually see how the machines are built. So it's still our largest training location. But then we also have remote training centers in Florida, in Texas. We're building a new one in the Charlotte area, and we're looking to expand up to the Northeast as well, to be able to grab a technician, maybe not have to travel quite so far, but for them to be able to do warranty work and to be listed on our website as a certified technician, they've got to take one of our certified classes. And then, of course, we have online modules that help them keep their training up to date, right? When we release a new product, hey, guess what? There's a 1-hour class you've got to take online to know how that works. Or some cases, it might be a 3-hour class that you've got to take to recertify your training. So we put a lot of effort into it because, we're up, well over, 10,000 trained technicians out in the field, along with our 9,000 dealers that are locally in the market to help consumers.
Wow. So I'm a homeowner. How would you kind of walk us through how you work with a homeowner to come up with the right solution to their backup generator need?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways you can find your way to us. One of the easier ways is you can go on Generac.com and you put in a request for an in-home consultation. And that really, Bill, that's the key, is that in-home consult that we want to send 1 or 2 dealers to your house. People like competitive quotes, right, to make sure that they've got the price right. But when we send a certified dealer over to your house, whether you called in, you went to the web, or maybe you found them, even in your local advertising or just by word of mouth from a neighbor, you want to have a certified dealer come in or a certified electrician come in, and they'll walk through like, hey, where's your gas located, right? How far away from the house can we put this generator? How far away from the lot line do we have to stay? Where's your electrical panel? Like, how much do you want to have backed up? And they walk through, our dealers have walked through all those questions that a homeowner or a husband and wife, might have about like, well, how much do you want to spend? People can opt all the way down to say, well, hey, guess what? I really only need my well pump, a fridge, the garage door, a couple of essential circuits. So I'll put on a really small standby generator, and that's fine for us, right? There's a lot of other people that say, hey, you know what? I want to wake up in the middle of an outage and make believe that there's nothing different except the noise of that Generac engine purring out, in the backyard. So that dealer, but those dealers, Bill, will walk you through all of that and get you to the right decision point to say, hey, you know what? Let's go with this size, right, for the house. We're going to place it in this location. And then last but not least, which is always so important, is, hey, we'll get the required permits for you as well. Like sometimes you need a permit from the town or the village or the county, right? We'll make sure that that gets done. In some cases, you don't need one at all, right? We don't want to put more on top than we have, but a local dealer will know exactly what goes on in your town or your zip code or your county.
Interesting. I've been hogging all the talk here. Hal, what you got?
Yeah, Kyle, I'm so excited to talk to you this morning. We hear a lot about bi-fuel generators and tri-fuel generators, and then there's more and more talk about battery power generators. I mean, what can you tell us about the different options for how to power that generator?
Sure. And Hal, it's a great question because it spans so many different types of products, right? If I stick with what we were just talking about, like the installed standby generator, every one of ours is both propane and natural gas, right? Because especially you get to an area that might be a little bit more remote. And by the way, that applies to Wisconsin. It applies to South Florida, right? Many communities are powered, people have propane tanks, right? So you put the same generator down on the ground, it runs on both fuels, right? Your dealer comes and they tune it to, natural gas, or they switch the regulator over to propane, no problems whatsoever. So on the standby side, it's pretty simple, regulated those two fuels. But Hal, the question, about a dual fuel or tri-fuel that you kind of see online and in the news, and is a little bit newer to the market, is your portable generator, right? Typically a portable generator, you're going to pour your, 1.5 gallons of gas in the top of it, and it's going to run for 12 hours, right? And hey, guess what? At the end of 12 hours, if that's what you have as a portable generator, you got to have the gas can, you go back and you fill it up. Some of the newer technologies out there, Hal, are that a portable generator can also have a hookup to your natural gas feed, right? Or they can also hook up to your propane feed. So if I'm a consumer and I'm walking the aisle of my home center, I can always, and gasoline is always there, right? But if you really want to think about, like, I want to hook it up to that fuel supply that comes out of my house, just make sure you're looking for that dual fuel, which is usually like a natural gas and gasoline, or propane and gasoline. You'll see it. Ours for sure, Hal, are marked right on the box. And most of them that you would see, if they're a dual fuel or a tri-fuel generator, portable that is, like, they're going to be printed right on the box.
Yeah, I know a lot of those homeowners love that concept that this just goes right into your natural gas line or something like that. So you don't have to go out there at 3 a.m. and go out there with a gas tank, right?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. Actually, it's funny, the stories that we hear in the market, Hal, like, hey, it's a big up and coming thing. And then you ask the question, well, how many of you actually use it plugged into the house? Like, feel like, well, actually, not that much, right? But it's a nice feature just to have, like, just in case I want to go and, put a gas line out of the house, like you would have attached to a gas grill or what have you. So it's a great feature to have as a just in case.
Kyle, my parents live on the Pennsylvania-New York border, and their biggest concern about needing a generator is a winter ice storm in their whole region of the country. I'm just curious, how does it break down nationally, like areas that are more concerned about winter weather versus areas more concerned with hurricanes or tropical weather, like as far as the nationwide demand for generators?
Yeah, Hal, you'd be surprised at the number of units that we have placed throughout, upstate New York, Michigan, Ohio, right? All of your northern states. And in fact, I'll give you guys just a very little known fact, that the home standby generator penetration, so the percentage of homes that have standby generators, the number one state in the country is the state of Maine, right? Now you don't have the population base there, right? So the total volume is a little bit lower. But if you think about, living in Maine, what do I get? I get snow, I get cold, I get ice storms, right? And generally speaking, the more rural you are, right, the slower your power comes back, right? And then the slower, the utility might be to react to you. So as I was talking earlier, people that are willing to take control, right? Boy, the people of Maine, right, they take control of what's going on because the time in which they come back from an outage, especially from an ice storm, is just longer. Now, last thing I'll close with there is that it's typically a smaller generator, right? You don't have the big air conditioners that you have down south, right? So you don't have the big load that's on the home. So there they get away with 10 kW units and 14 kW units, right? Whereas down south, you're in the 20s and sometimes even the 30 kW units.
No, that makes sense. I've been to rural Maine, and you could get the idea that people get pretty remote there and they want to be prepared. Kyle, I was on the ground in Louisiana during the 2020 hurricane season, and it was about 18 hours after a hurricane strike. I was in this town, all the power was out. And I drove by this grocery store and people are coming in and out like it's a normal Tuesday. So I went in. You would have thought you were in Cleveland in January or so. It just looked like a normal American grocery store. I was like, how are they doing this? So I talked to the manager. This was an interesting story. He said 6 weeks earlier, they were hit by Hurricane Laura and they lost, tens of thousands of dollars of food. So he said when the second hurricane came 6 weeks later, they detached from the grid. They went with generators even before they lost power. He said, we haven't lost $1 worth of food. So they made a major pivot after the first hurricane and decided we need a generator system and we need a plan right away. How often do you see businesses that make like a really strong pivot like that after a disaster? And then like, how quickly can you respond to help them set up a generator system? Oh, Kyle, I think you're muted. Sorry about that.
Lost your audio.
Are we good now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Hal, we're seeing that more and more because what you just walked through there to a small business owner, if they're an independent business owner, you lose a day of revenue or you lose all your food, your inventory, your ice, right? Like that's a major hit to a business. So there are, back to taking control, people are saying, hey, guess what? To put in a standby generator for a business might cost me $30,000 or it might cost me $40,000 by the time I get the right size. Now, many of them can run smaller ones as well. But they're looking at it saying, well, hey, this is actually more of an, I won't say it's an insurance policy, Hal, but it's more of an assurance policy, right? I'm assured that when the power goes down, my business, like it keeps rolling. And to answer the second part of your question was, well, how quick could we, get a standby generator installed on a small business like a convenience store? In some places, it can happen pretty fast. And generally speaking, there are two things that will slow you down, right? One is the permitting process, especially on the business side, right? You're going to have local jurisdiction that is making sure that that generator goes in the right spot. If you're at a gas station / convenience store, you don't want it in a bad spot where it's going to get hit or traffic. So there's a lot of code that's involved there. And to get that through the code process is probably the number one, I would say, restrictor plate on how fast it could go. And then number two is just having the gas and electrician, there to, cut the time and put it in. From our perspective, most of the units that you're talking about there, even, up to, 80 kW, which is a pretty big standby generator, a pretty big engine in there, we're shipping out from our perspective in 4 to 6 or 8 weeks. The bigger it gets, it goes a little bit longer. But even the 48 kWs that would power an average convenience store, we keep them in stock so that, when someone calls and says, hey, I just had a storm, we can ship that in many cases faster than what they can get the permit, which is always our target.
Wow. So you can respond to them pretty quickly. And I like what you said there about it being an assurance plan. And they're also assuring their customers when a storm hits, we're going to be there for you. We're not going to go out of business. So really a great model there and a great response from you all. Tim, I wanted to shoot the mic back to you. We're already around 10:20 or so, and I just wanted to shoot it back to you. This has been a great conversation so far with Kyle.
It's a fascinating conversation, and as a customer, we can talk more about that after the break. Because Kyle, we talked before the show about how we've installed one at my home, and we'll talk about that whole process because I'm not a do-it-yourselfer, and the job got done beautifully, and it couldn't have been done any better. So we'll talk about that after the break. But before we get to that, let's take a break from the conversation and go back to Bill to talk about what's going on in the tropics today. Bill, let's get a tropical update, and then after that, Hal will have your geotrek update. But Bill, what's going on? It's a little active for October.
Yeah, we're about a week or 10 days away from the big drop off of the peak of the season, and there is activity out there. Again, nothing threatening the U.S. Let me put some slideshow up here, and bingo, there we go. The wide view of the Atlantic. There's a lot of convection out there, but this is associated with a tropical upper tropical tropospheric trough, easy for me to say. A big front that's been carrying the remnants of hurricanes into Europe for the last couple of weeks. And the way we were watching all week, last week, is made it to be named Jerry, but it's still looking rather struggling as it races. They don't do well when they're moving real fast, and it's got a few things working against it now, but we'll see what happens there. Close up of Jerry, and you can see that the surface center is displaced off to the west of the deeper convection, and pretty much like it was yesterday. So not a whole lot of change there. There is some stuff down in the southern Gulf of Mexico, and Tim got a little taste of the moisture associated with a wave that's been working its way across the Northwest Caribbean, the Yucatan day before yesterday, and the last 2 days slowly crossing the Gulf. It's got a lot of convection with it, but it's also running out of water. It's going to be over land here pretty soon. So the anticipation is not much chance of anything developing, but it will bring rain, hopefully to the lower valley, and help your thing. You always need a little more rain down there, Tim. Latest forecast on Jerry brings it very close to the northeastern Caribbean islands, where there's a tropical storm watch out now. And they're very consistent. Model runs have been having it turn more to the northwest than north, beginning as early as later today, and keeping the center pretty much to the northeast. And as long as the asymmetrical pattern is such, they may not even get a lot of rain out of this system as it goes by there. Becomes a hurricane as it recurves into the open Atlantic. A lot of the models aren't that frisky with it, so it's a kind of a pretty ambitious forecast that we're looking at right now with Jerry. The Eastern Pacific has been quite active of late. This doesn't look like much, but it's Tropical Storm Octave. It's been going on forever. I'll show you the track of it. Priscilla, which was reached major hurricane status yesterday, has lost its really deep convection. You can still see good circulation and an eye feature with that. And the southern part of the same system that's crossing the Gulf is hugging the coast of southern Mexico right now. That'll bear some watching. I see if we've got any update on that. There we go. Yeah, it's still highly expected to develop, though. The concern, the retarding factor is non-meteorological, but geographical. The proximity to land may hold off on the development of that, though most of the models bring it out to the west of Puerto Vallarta, perhaps develop it briefly into a fairly strong storm before it recurves into Mexico. And there we have Priscilla and Octave. Octave would keep forecasting its demise, and it keeps hanging together, but they're pretty certain, and it looks like it to me too, that it's going to be gone by this time tomorrow, and what's left of it caught up in the broader circulation of Priscilla. Priscilla is still being maintained as a hurricane. Takes a while for them to spin down over the cooling waters, but it is heading into a hostile environment. Will lose its tropical characteristics as a depression as it comes across the Baja. That doesn't mean it won't be impactful. The thing that's of interest is the rainfall is it and its successor, which would be Raymond if it forms. This is the mid-level moisture and average winds in the mid-levels, and you can see the track of the moisture up across northwestern Mexico and into parts of Arizona and New Mexico for a fairly extended period of time because of the two system. And with that in mind, the Weather Prediction Center has this is a lot of rainfall for the desert Southwest. So over the next starting in a few days and over the next 3 to 5 days after that, we'll be on the lookout for the flash flood problems on the flashy terrain in this part of the country. For those that are wondering what's next on the food chain beyond a week, this is ensemble runs from the European model. It's not really that different from the others. It does show some occasional hints on the ensemble runs of some activity, maybe with the Central American gyre over Central America, but it's not really hot on that. And there's one other wave coming off Africa that, again, it doesn't show much development at this time. In any event, we have a lot of time before they get here. And lastly, the outlooks are put up by the Climate Prediction Center for weeks 2 and 3 capture the Central American gyre. This is the time of year where you look for that to occasionally spin loose a low that becomes even a major hurricane. Michael, back in 2019, originated from this gyre in October. One last reminder before I turn it over to Hal. You're listening to this long after I said it. Don't rely on this for decision making. Get the latest from the National Hurricane Center.
Hey, Bill, before you wrap it up, can you go back to the Pacific? We were talking a very loose Fujiwara a week or two ago in the Atlantic with Priscilla and Octave. Octave's going to be going eastward. It's going to be around the south side of that, maybe get involved with the new storm out there. Is there some Fujiwara going on with this?
I think Priscilla is going to take up the remnants of it. I think I have that. If I go back on this one real quick.
We don't talk about it very often, but it's
okay. Down here is Octave. Right. There's Priscilla, and Priscilla is going to be pretty much rendered meaningless. Octave by the flow of that. And you're right. If there is some left over of that, it might end up also feeding soon to be Raymond. That'll be another forecasting challenge after the next few days.
Yeah, an eastbound storm in the Pacific is a little bit rare.
Yeah, it really is. Until they get up in the higher latitudes and recurve. So,
good job.
Okie doke. Well, Hal, tell us about GeoTrek and what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, there for the tropical weather update. Well, with GeoTrek, we're exploring the world to bring you stories about extreme weather and natural disasters now covered by the mainstream media. We just did a podcast with Dan Kruger. He was also on NTWC. Plus, he was talking about the Flood Vision project where they're actually creating visualizations of what a flood could look like in your community before the flood even hits. It's great work they're doing with Climate Central. He came on the GeoTrek podcast on a podcast we aired this week. We're also in partnership with USurge, the United States Storm Surge database, and we did a reanalysis of Hurricane Helene where we stripped out the tides to see how much storm surge was Helene actually pushing. Turns out it actually falls in the top 10 American storm surges since 1900. If you remember at NTWC in person in South Padre, I presented the top 10 list back in April. Well, we now have an amendment to the top 10. Helene actually comes in at number 9. The storm surge was slightly over 17 feet. That pushes Hugo back in 1989 to the number 10 spot, and Hurricane Rita is off the list. So Helene was a massive storm making landfall as a Cat 4 hurricane in that Big Bend area of Florida, Appalachia Bay. We know that they have the setup there for a massive storm surge, and when we actually analyze the numbers, Helene comes in as the number 9 American storm surge since 1900. Speaking of the storm surge archive, we've been doing a lot of digging for the New Jersey coast, and we completed our first comprehensive storm surge history for Atlantic City, New Jersey. 89 storm surge events, a combination of hurricanes, but mostly extratropical, way back to 1911. And some interesting things on that list I just wanted to mention. Nothing really stands out that's really exceptional in Atlantic City. The highest storm surge was 7.7 feet from Superstorm Sandy back in 2012. But interestingly, the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962 had a big overwash. Some of the paleo data now from sediment cores are actually calibrate that there was a massive storm surge in 1821 from what they call the Great Gale. This was a hurricane that went all the way up the East Coast. The eye went right right over Cape May, New Jersey. And the sediment cores suggest that the storm surge from that was several feet higher than the Ash Wednesday storm in 1962. So that's the value of us going back 100 plus years with our archive. That helps us calibrate even what we find in these sediment cores. And it reminds us, even if you haven't seen anything big in your living memory, usually if you go back far enough in time in these coastal communities, even if it's in a sediment core, you can find something huge that happened in the past. That's everything we have from GeoTrek. Let's go back to our conversation this morning with Kyle. Tim, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Hurricane Hal. We appreciate that. And the GeoTrek is always a fascinating program, and you've asked great questions each and every time, so we appreciate that. Okay, we're talking with Kyle Raabe, who's with Generac, the Executive Vice President of Consumer Power. And Kyle, I want to talk about when after the 2021 cold snap in Texas, my wife said we are getting a generator because it got really cold. Our house was cold. The hotel that they evacuated to lost power. People were getting water out of the swimming pool to flush the toilets, and they said we're getting a generator. And I'm not a DIY guy. You know, if I go to the big box store and they deliver a generator in my backyard, it's just going to sit there until I find somebody to take care of it. So I went to one of the retailers that is very specific with generators, and number one, they had them in stock. You know, it was not a 6-month waiting list like a lot of people were fighting after the big freeze, but they did everything. Literally, all I had to do was write the check, and they even offered financing. It was all right there, and within just a few weeks, they pulled the permits, got electricians, plumbers, brought the slab, put everything in. Talk a little bit about how easy it is for somebody who's like, well, it's a lot of work to install it. Yes, but you guys can take care of that through your retailers and your professionals.
Yeah, Alex, you kind of nailed it there for me, and you kind of stole the thunder. You went through really what was an ideal scenario, and we find people that they have different levels of comfort as to who they want to deal with, and that's part of the reason why we try to be wherever that consumer is. So if you went to the big box, right, even most of our big box stores and our big box partners out there, right, we've got an install program with you, right? You can go to the big box, you can order windows, you can order an HVAC unit, you can also order a standby generator. And through the big box, who shows up at your door is one of our dealers. So what we do is we connect that dealer to the big box. If that's, somebody likes to, really, they have an affinity to transact through a bigger box store. But a lot of our customers, that's a small portion of the business. A lot of our customers do get connected either through us, through our websites, or just calling direct to our dealers. And Tim, that's the experience that we want someone to have, is that, hey, yeah, this is a complicated installation. You're putting natural gas or propane together with electricity, right? You're getting a permit, you need a slab. They're not, there are some fantastic DIYers that put them in, and they sometimes they do a great job. Sometimes you can imagine it goes otherwise. But when you have one of our dealers involved, that's the goal, is that, hey, a complicated install, they make it seem easy, they make it seem simple. A lot of them will walk you through the process as they're doing it. But a couple of weeks is a quick one. The average one that we see go in is probably from the second they show up at your door, they give you a quote, right? And people think about the quote for a while, and they get back to them. Right. So we see anywhere between 4 weeks to 12 weeks to get one put in, and not always restricted by the dealer. Right. But as we were talking before, sometimes it's a permit, sometimes it's just a homeowner thinking about it. Right. Like, hey, can I get financing? Can I make, the investment in the house? Can I make it just, over time? And that's where, we do coach every one of our dealers. Hey, offer financing. Right. Some people might have the ability to write the check for it, and that's fantastic. But a lot of people would like to extend that payment over. Sometimes it's as simple as 18 months, right? Like, hey, just give me 18 months to pay for this, and it's no problem. But the dealer's there to really make it easy, just as you experience. So I'm super happy to hear that.
Yeah, and it's terrific. And now, the generator kicks on every Monday morning at 9:00. You hear it roar for about 5 minutes, and it shuts off, and it communicates. And talk about this ongoing, the maintenance that's provided. If you do the maintenance contracts and things that they dial in, check out, make sure everything's running, and once a year come out, change the oil. I mean, it's an engine, like you said.
Yeah, they're complicated devices, but to take care of them is actually really simple. And just as you said, like it's an engine, right? So you've got to just check the oil, make sure everything's working correctly. So we recommend that you've got a dealer come out at least once a year, right, and just lift the lid. They go through all the electrical connections, make sure nothing funny has happened. We've seen bugs, or ants in nests, crawling underneath. I mean, the unit, although it's enclosed and there's fencing and everything, they do have to breathe, so we do have to let air in. But a dealer will check that out for you, Tim. The interesting thing that you mentioned there is that your dealer actually logs in and looks at it, especially with our newer units. Every one of our new units is connected via LTE, right? So there's a little radio in there, right? And it's monitoring, and we call it, hey, is a generator being monitored by a dealer, right? So when you've got that relationship with the dealer can actually see, like, hey, guess what? The light on Tim's generator, it's green, meaning, hey, it's ready to go, right? And then there's yellow status, and that yellow status can go from like, hey, I need an oil change, or I need an air filter change, or what have you. It could be just regular maintenance, but the dealer can see that when it's monitored. And then certainly if it goes red, especially when there's not a storm, that's where our dealers are at their best, right? Because they come on and say, hey, Tim's generator is throwing a red flag for some reason, a red status light. Let's go out and let's see what's going on. Now, they can see into that a little bit, right? So in many cases, they can come out even more prepared, right? Because they can see a code that has thrown that red light, and they can make sure that you're back up and running. And that can happen, like I said, certainly anytime that it's not running as result of an outage, but then even during an outage, if something were to happen along the way, they can see that red light go on because they're monitoring it. And you can certainly see it on the app on your phone too. There's tons of homeowners that are like, especially during an outage, they're looking at their phone saying, hey, is my generator running? Well, first of all, is your power on in your house, number one. But if you're not there, number two, they can see how it's going just based on the app on their phone. They can tell if I need an oil change. They can tell if things are, bright green and it's, plowing along and helping the house stay powered up.
It's amazing, and it's so hands-free for the user. That's what's it's just it takes care of itself. And I've had, I think once in the 4 years that I've had mine, the company called and they said, hey, there's a problem. We're going to come out, check it out, fix it, and you won't even know we were there. And that's exactly the way it worked. It was a minor issue, and they took care of it, which is nice. So
that's the ideal scenario, right? Is that you've got somebody watching over that unit on your behalf, but that you can always see it as well via the app that we've got.
One other thing about that with the natural gas, we didn't have natural gas on our side of the street. It was on the other side of the street, but the gas company, ran the line for free, didn't charge anything. They came out, went into the street, went through the neighbors' yards and put the gas in and didn't charge anything to install the gas line. I think people may say, well, I don't have gas. Well, if it's close by, you can, right?
Yep. In most cases, your utility will bring that gas, to your home. You think about it just from an economic perspective. A lot of our natural gas utilities, they enjoy generators. It consumes gas, right? That's revenue on their behalf. So there's an economic reason to allow them to have that gas to your house too.
Well, the hope is that we'll turn the whole house into gas and have, gas stove and gas water.
You got it.
That'll come. Okay. All right, back to generators. Bill, jump in. I've taken some time here. So, Bill, what do you have?
Well, we had at the very start there, you mentioned some of the innovations going forward involving batteries and other types of power sources. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways that we think about it, Bill, and certainly that we've invested in bringing products to consumers that are battery powered. If I start again back with a really small side, we've got our small battery portables, right? And that might be 1 kWh or 2 kWh battery that acts as a generator. And in most cases, people in a home will use that for a very, very specific application. Like I might have it to power a CPAP machine, or I might have it just to power a fridge that manages, my medications that have to stay cold. So really, really small. And they've got a very, most of those have a very limited lifetime because at the end of the day, it's a portable battery. If you want to make it any bigger, you wouldn't be able to move it, right? Because they get heavy. But we do have those because there are people who, whether it's an outage or they like to camp or they're tailgaters, right? And as we were talking about football before the show, right? Hey, they want to go out to their tailgate and they don't want to hear an engine running. So they've got a nice portable battery that runs their tailgate, right? In the crock pot or whatever you have cooking up for the tailgate. So that's on the small side. The other side, Bill, is that we've moved into what we call the clean energy space, where someone's got a solar array on the top of their home, right? And that solar comes down and goes into a battery that is then stored, and then in many cases for that application, it's used on a daily basis, right? So it's used to power the home, it's used to lower their electricity bills, right? So it's a much smaller portion of the business that we've just decided to move into very recently. So we're very new to that market. But it's a market that we know that, hey, over the next 20 years, right, there's probably some traction there that, you can collect power from the sun, store it, and then use it when it makes sense to you the most.
Yeah, I've read about that. It sounds like for people that are way out in a rural area that gets plenty of sunshine, that'd be a viable option. Or they probably can't get gas out there. They'd have to, like you suggested earlier, go with a propane tank.
Yep, there are people that do that, as well as, they're very popular in the state of California, right? A lot of sunshine, utility rates are high, right? So anytime I can collect energy and then use it in my house, right? Instead of purchasing from the utility, it just helps, take the edge off or provide a use case that, I've used less electricity, less expensive electricity from the grid, and I kind of power myself in those environments. So where you have like a really sunny application, you're right, Bill, like there's movement in that direction, and we'll continue to evolve technology and to work with that market and accelerate as that market does.
Cool. Do you work with the community aspect? What kind of work do you do with communities to maybe strengthen their resilience?
Yeah, a lot of times, Bill, we do a lot of that work. Actually, it comes back to our local dealers, right? So when you think about what our dealers mean to the local communities and the jobs that they provide in that local community, right? Whether it's electricians, technicians, maintenance crews and facilities, right? So a lot of our work actually is done by our local dealers in the local networks. Certainly as, bigger storms come in, we also deploy, right at the time of a storm. And in fact, we try to get ahead of it as far as we can. If you can predict where a storm is going, we'll many times mobilize a service team right here out of Wisconsin. So they load up, multiple vans, multiple parts trucks, and we'll roll our technicians down into that local market as well. To help support those dealers, because as we talked earlier, you have over 3 million standby generators out in the field, and while we wish everybody was like Tim, right, and took care of their generator every year and had an oil change every year, you just have people that don't, right? And we know that when a big storm comes, many of those people are going to need a little bit more assistance. So as we think about the communities in need, and what we try to do is we try to augment our dealers, because our dealers technicians, right, they're the front line, right? That phone call comes in. If Tim's generator wasn't working, who would he call? He'd call his local dealer that he's been working with, and they deploy the technician. Well, when everybody calls at the same time, right, any assistance needed is welcome. So we roll our teams down to supplement what the dealers are doing. And many of our larger dealers will actually pull technicians in, much like you see a utility pull people in from other utilities in the face of a storm. You see the trucks from Ohio lined up for a Florida storm, ready to go in and fix the grid. Many of our larger dealers will pull from other locations. So if a storm were to hit Corpus Christi, or if a storm were to hit New Orleans, those dealers that have outlets and they have locations that are further upstate or further away, they'll pull all their technicians into the affected area, and then we'll advance ship parts down to that area. So any of those technicians that are looking for very common parts, along with our team going down, we really drive every resource we can possibly manage into that local market to help the homeowners, because we know what they're going through, right? They're going through, literally, no pun intended here, but the darkest days when the power goes out, right? Those are some of the hardest times that people have. So anything that we can do to push parts, people, trucks, any type of service resource into that market, we activate every mechanism that we have to go help that community.
Fascinating. Do you have like the equivalent of an EOC that monitors the weather and the grids and whatnot going on to help inform those decisions on surging supplies into an area?
Bill, you nailed it, right? It's a data-driven process, right? As we watch the storm come in, based on how many people live there, what the grid looks like, where our teams start, already using the data to say, hey, this is our population of generators down there. This is the population of people down there. Here's what we think is going to have to roll down in. And that all does come, to your point, it comes from a storm center approach that we have here at Generac. I know you guys have had some retailers on that talk about their storm centers, right? And how, they're dispatching trucks and products and people. We do the same thing relative to generators. Now we have, the luxury of doing it from Wisconsin, where storms generally aren't that, prevalent, but we use those local dealers, right? Our teams that are on the ground, we have local teams that are, all over the country, but we use those to help inform us on what's going on the ground, as well as the data. But then our call centers, right, that we have here, right, they go on storm alert, and there's a whole storm, we call it, a storm protocol that touches just about every aspect of our business, from somebody on the phone, people on the web, right, answering questions, making sure that we've got engineers available in case there's technicians that have problems down in the field. So we go into 24/7 storm mode, just like any of our retail partners do that distribute our products, just like the dealers in the market do, and certainly just like the National Weather Service does, right? Like, storms coming in, all hands on deck. Let's get the processes out, and let's start enacting the storm protocol that's appropriate for the area.
That's great. Can you think of an actual example of a storm where you guys made a really big difference in a community by following this plan?
Well, yeah, Bill, the stories are almost countless, but there's always like ones that stick out in your mind. Even just last year when Helene came in, we had a team that was down on the ground in North Carolina, right in the middle of the tragedy that was going on. And there's, footage of us setting up generators and actually airlifting them up into the mountains. In that same scenario, we actually work, because your Wi-Fi, or I shouldn't say your Wi-Fi, your LTE service, right, across that area, when all your towers are down, right, it's completely down, right? So now you don't have cell service, and you think about what you rely on, right? What happens if tragedy were to strike any one of us? What would the first thing you do? You grab your cell phone, right, and you'd call somebody, right? Well, when that cell phone doesn't work, you think about being on an island, right? Just the emotional part of being now on a communications island. Our teams were actually working with Tesla and their Starlink to bring and power small units. We put small generators down on the ground to power their devices and bring cell service back to the area in the mountains that were knocked out. One, for the homeowners, obviously super important to be able to call my relatives and friends, let them know I'm okay, let them know what I need. But then also for your emergency providers, right, that are up in the area, whether it's fire, police, medical, right? So we really worked with the teams there to try to bring communications back in a very alternative way, right? Something that you wouldn't have expected, back to like, hey, that didn't exist in 2015, but here we are with portable products, helping people get communications back on, just to let loved ones know like what they need and that they're okay. And then, Bill, there's tons of stories that we could go into, people who have been in neighborhoods, right? And the standby generator turns on and they're the only one in the neighborhood, and they've got a swimming pool, and guess what happens during the day? Houses are out for days and people are over, and they become, kind of the hub of the neighborhood, and people are bringing food and grilling out, and they become, kind of a sanctuary for where people can go and like maybe catch a shower, maybe take a dip in a pool, have cold food in somebody's fridge. So we've got stories like that come in, and it kind of makes your heart warm of, hey, yeah, we're a generator company and we produce a product. But at the end of the day, like, we've got the very, very rare opportunity to affect people's lives.
Yeah, it's a great story. I really like that approach. I have one more question before I bounce it back to Hal. In our weather world, we're getting bombarded with rapid change due to AI. Do you see AI playing a role in the provision of backup energy that your company does?
Yeah, we use it, it's always an interesting topic, but we use it on a daily basis, right? To try to watch and predict trends that are going on, to watch and predict like where are power outages coming in from? How many dealers do we have in an area? Like, do we have sufficient coverage, right? What products should we be manufacturing? As we talked before, right? Like, the state of Maine consumes a very, very different product than the state of Texas, right? The state of Florida is really different than the state of Michigan. So we use AI to try to watch the market and make sure, like as we talked, hey, we've got product in inventory. Well, what products do you have in inventory, right? What markets do we think are going to be, ones that are going to surge at this time of the year, and what markets are going to be slow this time of the year? So we use a lot of data-driven tools, a lot of data-driven AI, number one, to make sure we're making the right product. But then number two is to make sure we're servicing everybody that put one in, right? So we're using AI as you start to be able to see and read all these machines that are feeding us data of, hey, my light's yellow, my light's green, my light's red, right? We watch and we actually use that to come back and engineer a better product. Like if we see a quality issue, we can see that like the second it happens, and we use AI to help us like, well, hey, why did that happen? Was it an installation issue, right? Was it the way a homeowner is treating a unit, or is there a design element that we can bring back to that generator to make it more reliable? So we wouldn't have those cycles, and we wouldn't have the speed that we use without AI helping us, work through all that data.
Fascinating. Hal, back to you.
Kyle, have you thought of partnering with Badger Nation? Think of those tens of thousands of pickup trucks leaving Wisconsin for every football Saturday, right? They could all haul a generator, right?
Hell, I'm going to be there on Saturday, right? Wisconsin's welcoming Iowa into town. It's homecoming weekend. Yeah, I hope to be walking around parking lots and seeing Generac generators all over the place and Generac batteries. And we generate. It's pretty funny how we generally do.
We were saying before the call, Wisconsin travels about as well as anyone, but you're right. I didn't even think about tailgates, right? People need power in all kinds of situations, even if it's not a disaster.
That's right. Sometimes it's just to go out and have fun. And I see that every time I'm at a Wisconsin game. You walk through the parking lot, it's like, hey, there's another one powering a tailgate. Hey, look, I got a crock pot rolling over there. Hey, look, there's music coming from over there. How are they getting that done? Hey, look, there's a Generac behind that thing.
Yeah, Hal, it'll even power your 75-inch portable TV, Hal.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. No, a lot of uses for your product there. Kyle, I wanted to ask you, looking ahead, say 10 to 15 years out into the future, where do you see the industry going as we move into the next decade or two?
Yeah, it's always up for debate, Hal, as to what you see tomorrow. Here's the way we see it. 10 years out, does a home standby generator continue to exist? Absolutely, right? Why? We know and we understand that to redo our grid, to reset the grid and make the improvements that would actually, bring something really reliable to a homeowner across the U.S., like billions of dollars, that the investment just isn't there, nor is the scale going to be there to make meaningful impacts. You might see it in pockets, but we don't see the grid getting that much better than what it is today. In fact, our projections based on where we look at it, it's going to slowly continue to decline over time. And with weather changing, the way we talked before, becoming more regular, right? Storms coming in places that maybe hadn't had before, ice coming to places that maybe hadn't had before. So we see it slowly getting worse for the consumer. Now, when I think about backup power, I think of standby power. We think that, an engine-driven technology like we have today, that will certainly be there, and it'll play a really, really big role because it's 100% reliable. It doesn't matter that the sun is shining, the wind is blowing, right? You're going to have backup power from a generator, whether it's, a portable or a standby. What we also do see, Hal, though, is that, as I was talking before, like we're getting into the storage space that is solar, right? That is coming down from the sun, and you're grabbing it for a period of time where it's available, and they're using it when you need it. We see that starting to improve or get larger and become a piece of the market as people take control of like, hey, guess what? I'm not going to rely on that utility anymore. And I've got a way to bring a technology into the house that is energy storage, right? So we see that, and that will get cheaper and cheaper as that technology becomes more available. So we kind of see the surge of that coming slowly over time as well. It peaked up really quick, and now it's slowed down a little bit, but we do see it continuing to improve and grow over time. So the backup power plan or a homeowner being responsible for their own energy, that's kind of where we see like people are just tired of like the how do I say this nicely? The inconsistency of where my utility is available and when, primarily due to weather.
Thanks, Kyle. Really fascinating to look at those trends and see where we might be going in the future. Tim, Bill, back to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've had a great program today. Let me end with this question. Just what message, Kyle, do you want to send to our viewers where Generac is now and headed? We've talked about that, but what's the message you want to leave with our viewers today and listeners today?
It's not that inconsistent with what you guys always say when I listen to you. Hey, be prepared, right? And it's different for everybody. It might be a portable generator that, hey, that fits me where I am. I might be, in a really tight, lot line, and I can't put a standby generator. Be prepared to have your generator and have a plan, right? Who am I going to call? Where am I going to go if things get really bad? It takes the stress off of you during the case of a storm. The storm is bad enough the way it is, or a power outage is bad enough the way it is. But if I know I can go to a playbook that is, pretty much correct to where I want to go, that's number one. And then number two is, if it's a portable generator, if it's, hey, these things are happening a lot, I want a quote for a standby generator, go get a quote, take a look at it. It might not be what you want to invest in, and that's great, but at least you'll know, and you'll know the rough timeline that it gets, that it'll take to put it in. But all of it, Tim, comes back around to hey, have a plan in place. And sometimes it's the evacuation plan. Who do I know that's, 100 miles away because I just got to get 100 miles inland, or I got to get, 50 miles inland. Do I know where I'm going to go if it gets to that point? It will help you as a homeowner be more prepared. And then you can think about how long do I want to stay and what are my power needs when I stay? So just plan and be a little bit thoughtful, and you'll operate through that outage a lot better.
Terrific message. Thank you for sharing that with us today. What did we learn today?
The retail and service side of Generac really got me thinking that they're really making it as easy as possible for people to not only find out the information they need, but also to install and service these generators. So great product, Kyle. I learned a lot.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Bill, what's our takeaway today?
Oh, I am totally impressed with the forward thinking, the company Generac on being ready for any storm that hits or any outage on the grid by having an EOC-like approach to the issues.
Perfect. Terrific program today, Kyle. I'm glad there's one in my backyard ready to fire up when the storm comes in. So thank you, Kyle. We really appreciate you being with us today. Great program. Thank you, Kyle.
Yep. Thank you guys as well. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on and just to have the conversation with you. It's great. And hopefully people hear this and just take the steps they need to be prepared.
Terrific. Kyle Raabe, Executive Vice President of Consumer Power for Generac. Let's thank all our sponsors who make these programs a reality week in and week out. They're always here. USAA, the South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Weather Company, Weather Boy, and LiveView. Those are the organizations that help us be here week in and week out. Next week, are you ready for it? Dr. Phil Klotzbach is back with us. We're almost to the end of the hurricane season. It's not been what was expected, perhaps. But hey, it ain't over till it's over. So Phil will be talking about that. Thank you all for being with us. Until next week, take care. Bye-bye.